I hate to poo-poo on anybody's parade here, right? I think that Ole Miss is a little bit overhyped.
The Ole Miss Rebels have got momentum, and one could maybe argue they've had momentum for a little bit, and maybe it was just kind of hard to feel it or see it. But this team wins double-digit wins again last year, goes and wins the Peach Bowl against Penn State, and then, lo and behold, pretty much everybody's coming back. So this is not something that we're used to with a transfer portal team, Mason. We're used to seeing a transfer portal team have a new team year in and year out. And look, Ole Miss has got a ton of new guys. I'm not saying they don't have new guys, but they brought back a ton of the contributors they had from last year and then sprinkled those guys on top.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's going to work out really, really, really good for the Ole Miss Rebels. So let's kind of just quickly go through some of the names, the additions, the acquisitions that were made for this offense. We know Lane Kiffin and his ability to run an offense is supreme. He is an offensive coach, and he wears that suit very, very well. Alongside his assistant, offensive coordinator, Charlie Weiss Jr., they got things popping in Oxford. I talked about it earlier. The Grove Collective is popping, okay? And that is solely due to Lane Kiffin and his ability to communicate with his fan base through winning double-digit games and really only losing games that they're supposed to lose the last couple of years. And that, I think that's really gotten the attention and the respect of the Ole Miss fan base, and I think is why the Grove Collective has continued to grow. Quarterback, everybody knows Jackson Dart's coming back. This is a Heisman candidate. This is a guy that I am pretty positive that he's going to be in New York. I am all but positive of that. This is his third year in this system, third year starting. He's going to be a really, really, really good quarterback in the SEC this year. Backing him up, you got Walker Howard, came over from LSU. Austin Simmons, one of the most talented quarterbacks to have ever graced the quarterback room in Oxford, Mississippi, as a lot of people have said, and the talking heads of Ole Miss have said. So I can't wait to see this guy. My expectations of him are through the roof. I hope it's later rather than sooner, because that would mean that something happened to Jackson Dart, and I don't want that to happen. Look, at running back, it's no secret Quinshon Judkins left the program, and it definitely ruffled some feathers, Mason. He takes off to Ohio State. I think the fans were pretty upset that Quinshon hightailed it out of Oxford. There was a lot of rumors, though, that there was a lot of players on the Ole Miss team that didn't mind it so much and helped old Buddy Boy clean out his locker. Yeah. So I'm asking you, Ole Miss fans. I'm not an Ole Miss fan. I'm just a third party watching from the outside looking in. What do you think about that situation? Shoot us a comment in this video and let us know. Are you upset with Quinshon Judkins? Are you happy that he's gone? Tell us what you think about it, because I am genuinely curious as to what the reaction is amongst fans on that topic. But look, you bring in Logan Diggs, okay? Ulysses Bentley is back. And look, the way this offense is set up, we're going to get into the wide receivers in a minute, but I just talked about Jackson Dart. The way this team is going to be able to threaten you over the top, I think is only going to make this running game that much more explosive this year. That it's reverse play action. It's throwing to open up the run. And man, we've seen that work really good in some systems over the last couple of years, particularly at the University of Georgia. Georgia did that last year a lot. Georgia threw the ball to open up the run game, and it worked like a charm. Oh, I mean, maybe one game it didn't work so well in that Alabama game, and that was the only game Georgia lost or was really even that close. Speaking of those wide receivers, Trey Harris, Jordan Watkins are back. They're back. They're going to be really freaking good. And then we bring in a guy like Juice Wells from South Carolina to add to this room. And you're starting to look at this wide receiver room and say, some of these guys better get out of here because they're not going to play this year. There are 4 guys in that wide receiver room that could start on any team in the country. And that room is like 12 to 15 deep. So I fully expect some wide receivers this spring to hit the transfer portal. Don't be alarmed, Ole Miss fans. It's a good sign. This time, it's a good sign. It's the cup runneth over. And that is a beautiful, beautiful thing to see. Can never have too many great wide receivers, guys. Can never be a thing. Oh, and by the way, Caden Prescorn, back at tight end, had 10 catches in the Peach Bowl just a couple of months ago. Guy is an animal, and I think is going to have an amazing season this upcoming year, in addition to all those offensive playmakers. Look, offensive line, you got 8 seniors coming back, tons of other sophomores and juniors, very few freshmen in that offensive line room. You got a bunch of guys who have been there, done that, and like I said, 8 of them are seniors. So looking really, really good. Defensively, let's go over to the defensive side of the ball. Pete Golding, back at coordinator. And Mason, I got a funny story to talk about this defensive coaching staff. Something that I heard today that I had not heard, and I think I had heard it, but I just maybe disregarded it a little bit because it wasn't told to me in this context that I'm about to tell you. Everybody remembers Mississippi State head coach and alumni Zach Arnett from last year. Guy was dealt a shit hand at Mississippi State. Let's just be real about it. He was dealt a shit hand after the death of the Pirate, right? Very, very tough situation. Mississippi State ends up shit canning him, fires him, sends him out on his butt, whatever you want to call it, okay? Released him, whatever. They're paying him a buyout, just like, we see all the time. Ole Miss decides they want to offer Zach Arnett a job. And Zach Arnett says, yeah, I'll take your job, but I'll do it for $0.
Wonder why.
He's hooking up Ole Miss with his expertise and knowledge of their rival program for $0 a year and allowing Mississippi State to pay him to coach at Ole Miss.
Yep.
What a slap in the face that is.
Same thing that Will Muschamp did when he came over to Georgia from South Carolina.
What a slap in the face that is. What a G move, I guess is really what I'm saying. That's pretty OG right there, dude. Look, I'm going to quickly go through this because this defense is loaded, and there's really only one question for me on this defense. I'm going to be honest with you. As far as starters go, I'm not talking about, I don't know about second and third string yet, guys. Okay, the coaches don't know about that yet. So how would I tell you? Okay, I'm not going to pretend that I know what the second and third string of this whole defense is going to look like. But this defensive line to start, J.J. Pegues, Walter Nolan, Xavier Harris, those are animals. Those are absolute animals. And remember, in this Pete Golding defense, there is defensive ends. It's not outside linebackers. It's true defensive ends in this defense. Jared Ivey's back. We just saw Jared Ivey play really good last year, okay? They got one other side to figure out. That defensive line, I think you'll probably move one of those defensive linemen over, and you're going to be just fine. There's tons of guys in that room. I have no worries about this team on the defensive front four. Linebacker, TJ Dudley, Chris Paul Jr., and a freshman from last year who had 3 or 3.5 sacks last year, really emerged, came onto the scene at the end of the year. Suntarin Perkins, Santorin. It's a hard first name, guys. Okay, I don't name these guys. I just mispronounce it on the internet. Well, he is fighting as a sophomore for a starting job amongst these guys that have tons of experience. You're only going to have 2 backer spots in this defense, right? The way that they have 4 down linemen. So you've got 3 really, really good guys, only 2 spots to start. I wouldn't be surprised to see one of those guys maybe hit the portal because there's a whole room of backups after them. So I feel good at linebacker. Here is my concern, guys. The only concern I have really for this defense as of now is cornerback. In particular, opposite of Trey Amos, who came over from Alabama. I'm not worried about him. But the side opposite of him, It's kind of up in the air right now. It's kind of up in the air. I feel pretty good about safety. Trey Amos and Trey Harris go against each other at practice, and they say that every time that it happens and they go against each other at practice, everybody has to stop and watch. Everybody's got to stop and watch. It's one of those matchups that you just have to see. So, all in all, guys, I think this is a loaded-ass Ole Miss team. What do you say about it, Mason? Their win-loss over-under is at 9.5. SEC championship odds at plus 650. They're right there in the race to win this thing, possibly. What are your thoughts on Ole Miss Rebels, and what do you think 2024 is going to look like for them?
Well, I hate to poo-poo on anybody's parade here, right? I think that Ole Miss is a little bit overhyped. And here's my point in this. If you go back to last year and you know, at the early part of last year, Ole Miss faced Tulane. You remember that game, Mark? Remember how good it was up until the very end? They ended up winning by
very
17.
Close game. Tulane didn't have their starting quarterback, guys.
Right. And it was a really close game. Okay.
Yeah.
They win by 17. Okay. No big deal.
And by the way, I don't mean to keep interrupting you. Okay, Tulane was winning that game, and there was a series of turnovers at the end of the game that made it look like Ole Miss ran away with it at the end.
Including a really weird pick six.
Yeah.
If I remember. Yeah.
Yeah, there was like 2 turnover touchdowns at the end of the game that made it look like it wasn't a 3-point game. It was really like a 3-point game. Sorry to interrupt, but I had to throw that in because I was recollecting that game as you were talking about it.
But Alabama, in a down year for them as far as, I know they made the playoffs and everything, but let's be honest, like that was not a great Alabama team. Kind of blew them out 24-10, held them to 10 points. LSU, that was a 6-point game, right? Arkansas, 7-point game. Auburn, 7-point game. These are 1-score games, right, that are close. Ole Miss, 3-point game. Texas A&M, 3-point game, right? They get blown out completely by Georgia. Mississippi State, they won by 10 points.
Yeah.
Okay. So they got to get a lot better. And I love what they did in the transfer portal. I think that they did get a lot better. But is it enough to really warrant them even being the third best team in the SEC? I'm not so sure it is. I'm really not so sure that it is. Now, in saying that, in the same breath, I'm going to say I don't know who you would put at number 3, but I think that there's a pretty significant gap between Georgia and Texas. First of all, between Georgia and Texas, there's a gap, but also between Texas and Ole Miss, I still think there's a pretty significant gap that I haven't seen them close yet, right? Maybe they come out here and prove me wrong and win the SEC. I know that they went out and did everything that they possibly could this year to right this roster, but I can't get over the fact that it's like I know they won 10 games last year. Those were a lot of really close games that could have gone either way. And you usually don't get the bounce of ball go your way in all of those games. So they had a lot of good fortune that I think could turn the other way this year. And I think it's pretty reasonable to say that. There's not a game on here that I look at and circle for Ole Miss from last year and go, man, they really just blew them out the water. Mercer, I mean, that's the only game that they really had a blowout. Their margin of victory was very small. And I think that says a lot about a team. Again, I know that they changed their roster up a little bit. And mostly, like you mentioned, they bolstered the roster that they already had, which was pretty good. But they had a lot of luck last year. I think that their luck runs a little bit down this year. I think they have a down year as far as the bounce of ball and everything. I think they end up at about 9 wins this year. And really looking through the schedule, your big question marks are going to be Georgia, of course. I think Oklahoma is a big question mark. I think that LSU is a big question mark. So there's 3 teams right there that you could potentially lose against, and that they, I mean, like reasonably lose against, I guess in a way. And then you could also have another close game with the Mississippi State, right? You could have a close game against Florida that doesn't go your way this time. South Carolina and their new quarterback might catch you slipping, a little bit.
Right.
Even Kentucky. I mean, I think that people want to just guarantee that this team's going to win 10 games. I'm not ready to say that yet. I do think that it's reasonable to ask some questions given the performance last year and how kind of lackluster they were for a 10-win team. I don't know. That's kind of my thought on it. That's kind of my take on Ole Miss heading into this year.
Burn, Ole Miss fans. Burn.
What do you think about that little breakdown there? And I mean,
no,
am I crazy?
No, you brought up some really good points, Mason. Like I wasn't, honestly, you might have like caught me drinking the Kool-Aid just now. I think you might have just busted me live on air, dude, drinking the Ole Miss Kool-Aid, bro.
I had to get you out of there,
Well, that's what cousins do, really. When at the end of the day, when it comes down to it.
I don't think anybody knows we're cousins yet. I think you just broke that live. On episode 200 or so.
Yeah, but yes, you make some really good points, and you're right. That's the way the bounce a ball goes, dude. Like it seems like you're lucky one year, and then if you're lucky one year in multiple games, it seems like okay, the rubber band's going to fly back the other direction, equal distance.
Right. Like the Georgia game alone, that was the game that you look at and you go, oh, there's that big of a gap. Like it could have been worse. Like Georgia really let off the gas in the second half. That game could have gotten way out of hand. And I just don't know that you're closing the gap that much to say, I mean, I'm not saying that there's no way Ole Miss can beat Georgia next year. Don't twist my words, Ole Miss fans or anybody. But I am saying that there is a massive gap, and I don't know that 10 really good players that you bring in the transfer portal are gonna close that gap. I don't think that's going to be the case. Now they could still make the playoffs even at 9-3. They could still make the playoffs, and that would be outstanding for Ole Miss. But I don't know that they're championship contenders like a lot of the national media will lead you to believe.
Boy, and they will lead you to believe it, no doubt about it. I was a believer until about 5 minutes ago. But no, seriously, I think that Ole Miss, I think their defense was lacking in a lot of situations last year. I think they gave up way too many points. I think that maybe the defense could step it up and help that, the gap in the score there. I think they can hold opponents to, closer to the 20-point range rather than the 30-point range. And I think that can help those point differentials a lot throughout the season. But I think you bring some really good points to the table there regarding Ole Miss, and we're going to continue our Ole Miss coverage throughout the offseason. We're going to continue coverage of all the Power 4 conferences as long as they may live. And then it'll be Power 3 and then Power 2 or whatever the hell happens with college football. Your best friends at the First and Long College Football Show are going to be there to break it down and talk some college football with you.